Is the camera on? I can never tell if this camera is even on. Anyway, I hope the camera's working. If the camera's not working, I will speak loudly so you can hear me wherever you're at. Anyway, I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be doing one of my most requested videos of all time. People have wanted me to rank my top 10 vampire novels of all time. Now I know that the thumbnail was a little bit clickbait, top 10 vampire novels for men. It was a little clickbait, but it's true. I mean, I've read a lot of vampire novels. I got to admit, every vampire novel on this list is going to be written by a man. I mean, I have not read, the Sookie Stackhouse vampire True Blood novels. I've not read Twilight. Well, I saw the movies. I take that back. I did read the first book. It's not going to be on this list, though. Or the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter. Or Anne Rice's Interview of the Vampire. I haven't read any of those, so I actually just can't put them in my top 10. So this top 10 is going to be a little bit, it's going to be the top 10 vampire novels written by men for men. I mean, I guess the thumbnail wasn't clickbait at all. So let's get started. As you know, whenever I do a top 10 list, I kind of get out of control and I can't fit everything into the top 10. So let's start with a couple of honorable mentions. And the first honorable mention is actually a vampire novel that I didn't really care for at all. But I have to put it on this list, otherwise people are just going to have, they're just going to have a come apart and but that's Dracula. I'm only putting Dracula on the list because it is the first ever vampire novel written a long time ago. And so it has to go on the list. But if you watched my review of Dracula that I did last year, you'll know that I had a few issues with it. So it's on the list just because people will just hate me if I don't put it on there. Okay, now there's another honorable mention. There's a couple things. This honorable mention it's not really a vampire novel. It's more of an allegory or metaphor about vampires. Where there's no real vampires in it, and that is Nosferatu by Joe Hill. So this makes one of my honorable mentions. And there's going to be another book in this list that is more of a metaphor about vampires than actual blood-sucking vampires. Now, most of these books I have written or I have filmed video reviews on my channel for most of these books. And if you want to watch the video review of each of these individual books, all you need to do is type in my last name, Durfee, into your YouTube search bar, and the title of the vampire book that I show, type that into your YouTube search bar, and those video reviews through some sort of pagan sorcery will magically appear upon your television screen, and you can watch those individual reviews. And I'm going to start out top 10, my 10th favorite vampire novel, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I just read this about a month ago. I will tell you, this is a vampire book written by a man, but it's not really for men. It's about a woman's book club who slays vampires. So I've already broken the rule of the thumbnail, top 10 vampire novels for men. The first one out of the gate is not even really for men, it's for women. But that's the way this channel is. It's a regular old dumpster fire clusterfuck. And a low budget, too. Yeah, it's a low budget cluster. George R.R. Martin's Fever Dream. This is a great vampire novel set on the Mississippi River on a steamboat ship. Vampires in New Orleans. Vampires on the Mississippi River. And it's very atmospheric. It's very well written. George R.R. Martin is also known for a very kind of not a real well-known series called Game of Thrones. Some of you may have heard of it, but he also did this vampire novel in his early career, and it's really good. I mean, it comes in at number 9 on my list. Number 8 on my list is a series of vampire hunter novels by David Wellington, starting with 13 Bullets, and then 20. Well, I don't know what order these in. I think these are in no particular order. But one of the novels is 23 Hours, Vampire Zero, 99 Coffins, and the final vampire tale, 32 Fangs. So that's a great series of vampire hunter books by David Wellington. And, it's basically like the main character is this girl named, what's her name? It's been a while since I've read these. Caxton. Her name is Caxton, State Trooper Caxton. And she hunts vampires. These are really good. These are really bloody. They're very well written. I really like David Wellington's writing style. So if you want to get into a good vampire hunter series, do these 13, starting with 13 Bullets. So we'll put those up there. That's number 7. Oh, these are great. Number 7, I Travel by Night and Last Train to Perdition by Robert McCammon. One of my favorite authors in the world, one of my top 5 favorite authors in the world, Robert McCammon. He's got these, I mean, I'll just read the back here. It says, "This is perfect for Deadwood fans and those who enjoy the American vampire graphic novel." And they're short little books. I mean, they read like little Louis L'Amour Western novels, but with vampires. These are great. And look at those dope Michael Whelan covers. Those are so cool. Yeah, this comes in at number 7. We might see Robert McCammon again on this list. I'm not sure. Number 6. Oh, another one of my top 10 favorite authors is Dan Simmons, Children of the Night. This comes in at number 6. In a desolate orphanage in what remains of post-communist Romania, a desperately ill infant is given the wrong blood transfusion and flourishes when he's supposed to die. Oh yeah, so this is the beginning of the vampire thing, I mean, it's like he promises. Anyway, also conceals a shockingly ultimate link to a clan of vampires and their legendary leader, the Fiend, the world calls Vlad Dracula, who for centuries has triumphed over countless rival tyrants. I think I'm going to be reading this month. I actually haven't read this in like 25 years. I think I'm going to reread this. So Children of the Night by Dan Simmons. Book number 6 in our top 10. Book, no, okay. The fifth book that comes in at number 5 is actually another series, and that is the Necroscope, the first 5 books in the Necroscope series by Brian Lumley. We've got Necroscope, we've got Vampire, we've got The Source, we have Dead Speak, and Dead Spawn. And these guys also have just fantastic, these just have fantastic covers by, gosh, I forget who did these. Let me look that up. I want to give this guy credit. Bob Eggleton. I didn't even need to let it came to me. Bob Eggleton did these great covers for the Necroscope series. Now these are, I think these are genetically, the Balkan Mountains of Romania, a terrible evil is growing, long buried in hollowed ground, bound by earth and silver, the master of vampire schemes and plots, trapped in unlife, neither dead nor living. Great vampire. Necroscope. Number 5 on the list. We will put these over here. Number 4, the 4th greatest vampire novel of all time. Another Robert McCammon book, and that is They Thirst. Remember Robert McCammon, I showed you, did the Western Louis L'Amour-esque vampire novels. This is They Thirst. I just read this a couple of years ago again and reviewed it on the channel. Across the centuries, an evil returns to feast upon the city of angels. They are timeless hunters of human flesh, spawned from the depths of the earth. Now this ravenous legion descends upon the canyons of Los Angeles to feed, to grow, to conquer, and Satan's war begins. Yeah, great. This is a pretty good vampire story. Number 4, They Thirst, by Robert McCammon. The third greatest fantasy novel of all time. Fantasy. What about? No, we're not doing fantasy novels. Vampire novels. God, if I've said fantasy this whole time, we'll edit that out and we'll put vampire over the top of it. But Carrion Comfort by Dan Simmons. Remember I had a Dan Simmons book earlier, Children of the Night. Well, Carrion Comfort is a great vampire novel. However, it's kind of like Nosferatu by Joe Hill, where the vampires aren't really vampires. The story is more of a allegorical, metaphorical tale of vampires, if that makes sense. All humans feed on violence, but only those with the ability have tasted the ultimate power. Ordinary vampires possess the body, but only those who use the living can violate the soul. They gather their strength through the years. They plot their unholy games. They war amongst themselves, and the victor will stand alone against a world without defenses. Not really any vampires in this per se, even though it says it on the back. It's more of a metaphorical vampire tale of people bleeding each other's souls through other means than just sucking their blood with their vampire teeth. Number 2. We're getting to number 2, and these books are dope. These books are so dope. There's 2 of them in the series so far. I don't know when the 3rd book will come out, but this is Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. They come in at number 2. These are, now this I could say fantasy, because I think these ended up in my top 100 fantasy novels list also. But this is basically Game of Thrones if there were a lot of vampires involved. That's basically it. It's a medieval, grim, brutal, knights in shining armor, castles, but with vampires. And it's super dope. And these books have so many cool illustrations in them. They're just magnificent books to own. Because I bet there's 100 illustrations in each one of these books. They're just absolutely great. So that is number 2, Empire of the Dead. So those are good books. They made the list. Number 1, my number 1 favorite vampire novel of all time. And it's not even close. This one reigns supreme over all of the others that I've mentioned. It's just the greatest vampire story in my lifetime that I've read. And that is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. The ultimate vampire novel. My first ever as a child introduction to vampires when I watched the TV series that came out in the late 70s. I watched that and then a few, when I got into my teenage years, I actually got the book and read it, and it was just my very first introduction to vampires was Salem's Lot by Stephen King, and it still holds up as the greatest vampire novel of all time. My main man, Stephen King, wrote it, and it's super fly, and it's everything you want in a vampire story from beginning to end. So there we go. That is my top 10 vampire novels for men, written by men. I mean, I should go pick up Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire at some time and try it. I mean, I did, like I said, I did try Twilight. And I did watch all the Twilight movies. I mean, I was a Team Edward. That's who I was throughout that whole, thing. Anyway, there we go.